Very good. Thank you so much. All right. So let's presume that, and hopefully people have already started a lot of their planning, but let's presume they're starting right now. What are three things you recommend that they think about?
I would say, first of all, like take a look at the president's budget, right? The budget's going to come out and you actually will have an opportunity to do that here at Carahsoft. They have a great session with Rob Efris. I think it's on December 12th, where he does a really good job of dissecting the budget. I think that's really helpful. And then understand what, agency justifications, budget justifications for what they need to do to spend money. So once you understand that, what, how you're going to target your customer, what justifications they need to make. I agree with, both Darryl and Drew, like align yourself with mission outcomes. Like what is the mission outcome that the customer wants to drive? Go in there and talk about how you can help, you can be more outcome driven, right? And set milestones for yourself. The sales cycle in government is long, right? And you can, if you're not reaching certain milestones, be able to walk away and move on to the next thing so you can actually close that opportunity. And again, I agree with Darryl, bring in partners early. They often have the contract vehicles. They are the road to acquisition. Start with the end in mind. How is the customer going to buy? And work backwards from there.
I want to ask a follow-up question. On our last panel, we talked about buyer behavior. And one of the things that came up is there's a lot of new people in roles. A lot of people, obviously, a lot of people are retiring. A lot of people were forced to retire. A lot of people made the choice to retire, not just in B2G, but in B2B as well. So there's a lot of new people in roles. What's the biggest shift? We expect to see in B2G and B2B buyer behavior in 2026? And how should sellers prepare?
No, I mean, I agree on the AI front. I think you can assume that customers are going to do product assessments using AI tools, right? And by the time you get in there, you need to be actually talking about like what mission outcome you can drive. So the sales cycle is going to change. So you're less the gatekeeper of information, right? And you're going to be more the person who comes in and helps them understand how this can transform their business. So you just have to make assumptions that when you walk in, they're already going to know a whole lot about your product and what it can do and competitive products as well. So I'm hoping too, because of this, it'll help speed up somewhat the sales cycle, right?
It's imperative upon selling professionals to educate their customers, help them understand not just how their technology will help, but how the overall scope of things. I did a Sales Game Changers podcast with a couple of CIOs for the government. And the one bit of advice, they gave us a lot of advice, but the final thought was, help me understand where the market is. Give me those insights.
When you're going into these meetings, if you're preparing, you're going to understand what kind of use case they want to drive. But also, I think it's really helpful to come in prepared to talk about where you've done that somewhere else. Where else have you driven a similar use case with a customer and how have you made them successful, speed to market, business outcomes you help them drive? I think that, and also, being able to offer to connect that customer to talk to another customer. That is also, I have found really key. Customers always like to talk to other customers behind the scenes without you there, right? Because they can have a truthful conversation. So, being able to walk in and say, look, I know you want to do X. We did that over here. Mm-hmm. This is how long it took us. This is the, the savings we created. This is the, the business outcomes we drove. And, oh, by the way, would you like to have a conversation with that customer? I think it's very useful.
Let's get specific. 3 things that your reps should be doing to grow their partnerships.
Look at your account and understand who are the partners in your account and what role are they playing in that account, right? And then understand the role that they're playing and then map out, do we have relationships with those partners or do we not have relationships with those partners, right? And so figure out like who you need to build with and who you already know, right? So start there to kind of map it out. But I think, doing things collaboratively with your partner. So like I'll give you an example actually of something that is very effective that we do at Snowflake. We have something, they're called snow days, right? And we actually have them, ironically, snow days. We have 2 going on this week, and it's where we bring in customers and we invite other customers and we have our partners there. So specifically, we're doing one with Amazon and another systems integrator, and they come in and they tell their success stories, right? So we're partnering with each other to reach other customers with our success stories. So I think that is something that is super effective. So being proactive out in the community with your partner, doing events, doing workshops, not just an event, but like doing a workshop, evangelizing that story, understanding what your partner's role is in your account, and then also like being an advocate for that partner, right? Advocacy, right? Standing behind them, like understanding what they want, what they need out of the partnership, I think are the big three things that we talk to our reps about. It's not just about you, right? They have things that they have goals, they have objectives that they are after. Understand what those are, and you'll work better together.
So let's talk about, let's address it from the seller side and from the customer side. What are you seeing people do, et cetera? What are your recommendations on how sellers should be using AI specifically to gain that 2026 advantage? And just curiously, if there's any mistakes that you see them doing as well.
So I think in meeting preparation, I think it's, it's an amazing tool for folks. I think the mistakes that I see people make is kind of what Darryl hit on. Like people get over reliant on it, or it's also like it's too genericized, right? You're pumping in questions and you're just like regurgitating those answers, right? It's there as a tool, like a research tool for you to help you prepare. It's not like your original thoughts, right? So use it as something for preparation, but there's nothing like your own, critical thinking that you need to apply when you actually go in and talk to the customer. So we've also internally at Snowflake, we have our own AI tool. It's called Snowflake Intelligence. And so also when our reps are preparing for meetings, we ask them to use that tool because you can go through and it'll say like, where do we have customers with similar use cases? Like how many times have we deployed this and where have we deployed it? And what was the outcome? And like, what's the consumption that customer is driving? So using it for preparation and knowledge, but also, don't forget, use it to educate yourself, not to, be your voice.
Give us the audience some advice on how do you build that brand? What does it mean? The word brand in this context, and give a couple of thoughts, ideas. Like I mentioned, the one bit of advice we always give is you want to be the guy or gal who's the cybersecurity expert for the Navy. And if you're local, you want to be the top real estate agent in McLean or whatever it might be.
So it's funny, we were just talking about it at the table. Like customers don't buy things from people they don't like. They will go out of their way to not buy something from you if they don't like you. So, when I think about brand, I think about a couple of things. I mean, I think the first piece is, know what you're representing and be knowledgeable about it and be able to talk about it. So whatever company you're working for, you need to be comfortable, speaking about what you do and outcomes you've driven for customers. So like being that knowledgeable person that people feel like they can rely on. But I think, more importantly, back to the first point I made is like, being authentic, right? Being that authentic person, being that empathetic listener, being that advocate, right? And if you're seen as a person, that can be trustworthy, that will advocate on behalf of somebody else, that people genuinely feel is authentic, right? Like that's your brand. And you never know where you're going to run into people like we were talking about earlier. Like I used to work at a company called Agilex, and the gentleman who ran our intelligence business became the CIO of the CIA, right? So you just remember, like anybody that you interface with, like treat them like, you would want to be treated. And I know that sounds like I'm your mom, but it's true, right? Because when you treat people badly, they don't forget it. And when they have a bad experience with you, or they feel like you haven't been authentic or genuine, or you misled them, it damages your brand. Right. So when people, when people feel like they can reach out to you for advice and they can trust you, I mean, it's very flattering, right? Because it means that, they trust what you have to say, and you are seen as somebody who is, a leader in the community. So that's how I think of brand.
I want to thank our panelists. Before I ask you for your final thought, I'd like to each of you to submit to the audience a habit that you do religiously, whenever, morning, week, whatever, a habit that you do that you wish that your sales professionals also did that has led to your success?
I try to look at the news every day. And I know that sounds silly, but like industry news every day. Every morning, I try to get up and read certain publications online to figure out like what's going on. And it sounds like duh, but it doesn't happen all the time, right? And so you can keep abreast of what's happening. I don't like walking into a room and somebody is like, "Didn't you see da da da?" And you're like, "No." I have no idea. But so I like to just try to be in general aware of what is going on in the industry, changes that are happening, right? It's so important, and a lot of people don't do it on a daily basis. So it's, take an extra 30 minutes every morning, pick out what you like to read, what gives you the most, you find gives you the most information. There's a lot of really good publications out there. I won't plug them on stage, but it's very helpful. And it's also helpful like when you're out at events and talking to people, right? It's a part of your brand. It helps you be knowledgeable. You're abreast of what's happening in the industry that you're serving.
Nice and succinct. I want to thank the panelists for the great ideas. You definitely exceeded what we were hoping to get across today, and this should definitely give a nice launch for people to succeed in sales in their 2026 plan. Give us a nice crisp thought.
Sure. I would just say, this is a really different selling environment. It's different than it's ever been. So take advantage of it, right? We talked a lot about how you use AI tools for preparation, but hopefully, things will speed up, right? We've got an administration that is looking for, commercial off-the-shelf solutions, looking to move fast, looking for modernization, and looking for cost savings. So I think, now that we've gotten through this budget mess, hopefully, right, we'll see some things shake loose, but hopefully things will move a lot more quickly. So take advantage of it, right? Take advantage of this time and make the most of it.